We're honored to have with us Mr. Harmen van Sprang, co-founder of shareNL and co-founder of the Sharing Peace Alliance. He will be speaking on the opportunities and challenges of the sharing economy and what it means to be a sharing city. We will begin with a presentation by Mr. Harmen, followed by a question and answer session moderated by Dr. Faizal, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies, where he leads the Economics and Business Research Cluster. Let us welcome Mr. Harmen to the stage for his presentation.
Not you first.
I always tend to start my presentation with my two daughters because we in the Netherlands say samen spelen is samen delen. In other words, if you want to play together, you have to learn to share. And that is, of course, also the metaphor I think, for life. If you want to live together, if you want to work together, you have to learn to share. And of course, maybe partly depending on your culture, I hope we all are partly brought up like this, or at least that we are bringing up the new generation in this way, that you also have to learn to share somehow. And by the way, this is not my backyard, as I also said yesterday. Does anybody know where this is? No? Yeah, Paris, Versailles, so really near Paris. And my daughters, of course, dressed for the occasion. We were, at that time, a few years ago already, going to this house. And this house we got through a home exchange. Does anyone already have any experience with home exchange? So not Airbnb, but directly exchanging or swapping a home with somebody else? Right? No? Try it sometimes, guys. It's really interesting because, of course, we all know Airbnb and maybe some other housing platforms, but this is much older. It's like, I think, from the 70s at least, those crazy 70s. And what you have here is a platform that makes it easy and possible for you to exchange a home or an apartment or whatever house or a castle even with some other people, as long as you meet each other's demands. So, for example, we're just living in Amsterdam 2 stories up. These people are living in a large house in the midst of France, and somehow they wanted to go to our apartment and we wanted to go to their house and their garden. And that is a really interesting phenomenon because you have, of course, a little contact through the website, and you decided that you want to go to your homes, and at the same time, of course, that's important. And then you drive 700 kilometers, and they open up the door for you, and they lead you around the house for 15 minutes, and then they give you the key of their most valuable asset and drive all the way to your home, solely based on trust. No money involved. You only pay, I think, maybe 20, 30 euros a year for the website that you use for this, but that's it. At that time, we were going there with this car. This is the car we used to have, but we're totally fitting the statistics, at least in the Netherlands. 90% of the time, a car is standing still. So we got rid of it. Because as you might know, in Amsterdam, you bike everywhere. So I bike from my home to my office in 12 minutes. Why should I take a car? During the week, if I go to an appointment outside of the city, I just take a train because then I can work in the meantime because this is not a self-driving car. Maybe then I would take a self-driving car again. But in this case, I use the train. So it was just standing idle all the time. It was more functioning like an extra garage with like 2 little kids than a car. So we got rid of it. And we started car sharing. And one of the more popular car sharing, peer-to-peer car sharing, so really the car sharing with your neighbors or people in the neighborhood, one of those platforms in the Netherlands is Snapcar. And it's interesting because we put it, we put our profile there, of course, and we just got along with the platform. But after a few years, so that was a great experience, but also our behavior changed again. So at one time, my wife did another job, and then she had to use a car more and more, so then it became not so attractive anymore to every time lend somebody else's car. And then we thought, okay, do we want to go back to owning a car again? No. And what is happening now is that, for example, traditional companies are opening up to this new phenomenon. So there is a leasing company in the Netherlands that says, okay, if you are going to privately lease a car from us, you can rent it out through all those platforms. Whilst normally, of course, at least in the Netherlands, but I think it also goes for your country, if you would lease a car, they would restrict you to maybe use it for yourself and your partner, and that's it. But now you can open up. So this is now the car that we are offering on Snapcar. So we used to used the cars from neighbors, and now we offer our car, or our leased car, it's not our ownership, to other people. And so, for example, if you would go to the site of this private leasing company, you could already make an estimation of what would probably be your behavior on those different platforms, and also do this calculation and see how much you would save on your monthly costs. So to be honest, this car costs us all in total 300 euros a month, excluding only the gas. But you can cut, for example, half of your costs by sharing it sometimes with people in the neighborhood. And I think that is an interesting model, because still we now have this leased car, but still it's not used every day. If I'm at work and my wife is not at their own office and not going out for training, etc., then it's just standing still again. You can rent it out on these platforms. And if you look, this is even a bit of an older map, but these are like those snap cars, those peer-to-peer available cars in our city. So at any given moment, there is a car for you. And it may either be a small car or a convertible or a van if you want to move, or any type of car is there at any moment you like to get it. And you pay a little fee, of course, to the platform, but mostly to your neighbor, because it's a costly thing in a car, and you drive away. And it's interesting to see that this peer-to-peer car sharing is really picking up, and it's also seen by the fact that Europcar, which is a big car rental company in Europe at least, just recently invested 10 million euros in Snapcar. I think that says something. It's not every day, at least not in the Netherlands or in Europe, that so much money is invested in this new phenomenon called sharing economy. And they got like a 20% ownership now of Snapcar. It makes sense somehow. If more and more people are going to their neighbor to get a car instead of to the rental company, this company wants to be in this new game too. This is a way to do it. Another example from the Netherlands, and I already challenged the people at the workshop yesterday to put it in Dutch. It's called thuis afgehaald. So there are a few Dutchies here in the room who can do it, but thuis afgehaald, I'm not going to ask you to pronounce that, but they also have an English website, thank God, and it's called Share Your Meal. And Share Your Meal is all about, you can guess it, sharing your meal. It's a possibility if you, for example, like to cook, that you at a certain day think, you know, I'm not only going to cook for myself or for my family, but I cook a few meals more and I'm going to put them on this website, on this platform. And somebody else in the neighborhood, for a little fee, can pick up those meals. Well, that's interesting. And again, if you see, there's always a home cook somewhere in your neighborhood. What was interesting is the fact that at a certain moment, there was this elderly lady seeing an item about this platform on Dutch television. And she thought, hey, this is interesting, because I always get my food delivered through a service from the city government, because I'm elderly and in need. But I don't so much like the food. It's not really tasty. And then she got in touch with this platform and just asking, is it maybe possible that there is also a home cook on your platform that is living nearby and could deliver his or her food to me? And yes, this platform made that match. And this person said, okay, you know, I'm willing to cook for her sometimes and also to bring it to her home because she's elderly. And that led to a new service from this platform where they are now working more with city governments to partly substitute this service where the city government maybe not has to deliver all those meals to the people in need, but also this platform and thus the community, thus your neighbors take care of delivering the food. And I think that's an interesting take of what could be partly substituted by a community. Another example, again, of course, for the Netherlands, that's what you get. Peerby. It's one of the poster childs of the Dutch sharing economy, and it's making it easy to share goods with each other for free. So some of you are maybe already a bit more in the field of the sharing economy know this example of a drill. Everybody has one, but a drill is used like 12 or 13 minutes in its life. Why does everybody have a drill? It doesn't make sense. Like in a research we did for the Dutch government, we estimated that you could do with 50 households with one drill. So this platform makes it easy and possible to just ask something that you need, a drill or a baby bed for a day for incoming guests, or like a table because you're giving a party, you need an extra table for outside, whatever it may be that some other people have in their attic or in their backyard and not using every day, you can lend it, you can borrow it from them. So you put it there and you give it make it a bit more social. You give it a reason why you want to borrow it. It goes scanning in, of course, through the technology in your neighborhood. And most of the times, within 20 minutes, it has a match and somebody else in the neighborhood saying, okay, I have this for you. Come and pick it up and bring it back later. We'll be fine. And of course, this also has not only a societal impact because people meet each other and maybe new acquaintances come from that, but also it has an impact on sustainability because if you would expand this more and more, you would need a little less number of drills or other products in your neighborhood. And what's interesting, PRB, as it is growing, also needed a little more capital to expand their services and to make their services better. And I think a little bit of practicing what you preach in the sharing economy is then start with a crowdfunding campaign. Because hopefully your own crowd, your own people who are using your platform believe in you. And it showed because they started a crowdfunding campaign and they made a strategy for, I think, at least 6 weeks how to do this and how to encourage people to invest. Within 3 days, they got like the maximum they could do on the platform, on the crowdfunding platform, and got 2 million euros. So again, there you see the belief of people, in this case, in this phenomenon in the sharing economy. These are some of the companies that we, shareNL, are working with. And on the left side, it's mostly the logos of sharing platforms. On the right side, and most of those will probably not be so familiar to you, but are like traditional companies, like insurance companies, banks, city governments, national governments, European Commission, all those organizations. And it's not to show off here, it's just to let you see that like all these organizations are somehow aware of the sharing economy and somehow want to be involved. It might be just with a presentation to be aware, it might be with some advice there, it might be with a research or a pilot project, but all these organizations over the last few years, because we're doing this now only for 3.5 years, are involved somehow in the sharing economy. And just a little idea of what we're doing. By the way, we have an office in this great building, not the whole building, of course, because we're just a small social enterprise. But it's a governmental building for social enterprises, so it's a great place. So if you're ever near, and some people have been there, but feel free to drop by. Just briefly, what we do is these kind of things, as I do now. Workshops like yesterday. Research, for example, for 2 Dutch ministries, but we also set up a research with the University of Amsterdam to get more insight, for example, in the behavioral aspects of people in the sharing economy. Of course, bring a lot of people together to meetups, events, and round tables, because this is important. And we really believe that we should do this all together. So not only with startups or not only with governments, not only with the companies, but all together. And because we believe not only in telling things and saying other people how you should do and act, is also doing our own projects. And the 2 larger ones are on mobility or transportation. So we have a 3-year public-private partnership in the Netherlands where we are working on 100,000 shared cars on the road in 2018. And this is again a joint effort. This is where we have the national government, some bigger cities in the Netherlands, the leasing companies, the insurance companies, and of course those platforms in the sharing economy who are sharing those cars, all together 40 organizations working for 3 years on getting more shared cars on the road. Not an easy effort, I must say, but we're working on it. And the other one, and that's partly also why I'm here in Singapore, is sharing cities. And I will tell you more about that soon. Well, you always need like this bigger vision, right? You do it with a certain reason or a certain purpose, and this is ours. So it might be bold and it might be big, but we really believe that if we could grow to a balanced sharing economy, and I say balanced because we really develop it with an eye for the opportunities and the challenges. It's not only opportunities. It may be the uptake now, but it's also really quite some challenges, especially for governments. But if you grow to a balanced sharing economy it might lead to a society, a sharing society maybe even, where it's more logical not to only buy things, but also share things and maybe have a bit more diversified and balanced consumerism, and therefore also maybe a more sustainable, prosperous, and happy life. I know it's big, but it's really what we're striving for. At a certain point doing these researches, we thought, okay, we need a model. You always need a model. You know, I'm not an academic in a way, I'm not a professor or something, but you need a model. So we thought, okay, let's make one, and hopefully it's of use for discussion with whoever we talk with. And so we came up with this, and it's not that difficult. But the thing we did is put the sharing economy in the regular economy, because we don't want to see it totally apart from it. So the red and the light red part is the sharing economy, and the blue part is the regular economy. We divided 10 markets, from goods and services to logistics, energy, spaces, I think, care, 10 markets. In all those different markets, the sharing economy is already active. And then we said the darker red heart of this model is the peer-to-peer sharing economy. So, for example, again, that car sharing platform, Snapcar. The outer ring, the light blue ring, is the business-to-consumer ring, is the oldest in the book. Is in this case, for example, the big car rental company or the big hotel chain. And you see those two other colors in the middle is the new models that are evolving. So if I stick to transportation, yeah, there you can see it better. I don't know if you know the platform Car2Go, which is at the right, but then the second one, so next to Avis. Car2Go is a service from Mercedes, or let's say Daimler, the producer of Mercedes and also of the smart cars. And what they are doing is also in Amsterdam putting hundreds of their smart cars on the streets. Let's say just like the bikes now in your city, you know. Just putting them everywhere and giving access to their product. So they're making their product into a service. You know, you don't buy that smart car, you just step into that smart car, you drive it for half an hour or half a day and you leave it. You don't have to bring it back to the same place, you just leave it somewhere else in town. It's an electric car. And that is not sharing economy in its purest form, it's not peer-to-peer sharing, but it is, of course, a traditional organization tapping into the philosophy of the sharing economy. So you see those traditional companies coming closer to the sharing economy and the same direction. You see also some sharing economy platforms becoming more efficient, sometimes also more commercial, and moving to the traditional economy. And this is happening at the moment in certain cities and countries. And this is making it really interesting for everybody in the field. This is an attempt for a definition, but again, this is something you can discuss about like for hours or days, and we all disagree somehow of what sharing economy is or isn't. But what you in general see is that those platforms, and I'll give you some more examples afterwards, after this model, that you see that they are partly substituting the services of a traditional company. And if that is growing, that is of course what they call, and then you forget the word, disruptive. I know it's a bit of a trendy word, but it is disruptive. I mean, it's doing something to the traditional business models of traditional companies. You might also perceive that as a challenge or maybe a new chance for you, but it does something. So what you see in general, and then we go back to more examples because it's Friday afternoon, I know. You see that a person, an individual or a citizen, whatever you want to call it, is getting a lot of new roles that maybe he or she didn't have before. He or she is now a seller, for example, through eBay, an hotelier, so to say, through Airbnb or other home sharing platforms, a private driver through, maybe here you have Grab or Grabhub, or if you want to call Uber sharing economy, then Uber. Postman, because you have logistic platforms where you can say, okay, I'm going to deliver some packages instead of the traditional postal man. Energy suppliers, because maybe you have, you're collecting the sun on your roof, but you have too much and you can share it with a neighbor, really you can. A lender through crowdfunding or peer-to-peer lending. A cook, I told you, on those platforms. A caregiver, because you also have platforms where you can share your care. A teacher, because there are also skill sharing platforms. And a handyman, because of course you also can do like little errands or gig work at different platforms. And of course, the technology that is making the sharing economy happening is also seeing to it that this is happening now more and more, and that it is really also empowering your citizen or your colleague or yourself in a way that we haven't maybe seen before. Really quickly, before I go to the Amsterdam sharing city examples and more sharing cities examples from the world, what else is happening? For example, and this is all Dutch examples, Barco, boat sharing platform. I mean, if you can share those cars, why not share those boats? It makes it's so simple. MotoShare, motorbikes. Pick this up, as I told you, logistic platform. So maybe you bought this bike on eBay and you can send it with a traditional postal company, or somebody in the neighborhood happens to take that bike with them for you. And of course, you pay them a little fee. Camp 2 for RVs or campers. Park Flower Rent, also a Dutch platform. You go to the airport with your car because you're going on holiday. You can leave it there for a long time parking for 2 weeks. Or what they can do is rent it out to an incoming traveler. And then your car is earning money while you're on holiday. That's an interesting thought. 3D hubs, you can share 3D printers. Maybe you don't have one, maybe you do, and I really want to print a cup for my mother, then I can use your 3D printer. Jeepo, maybe you don't have storage space, but maybe somebody else in this dense city has a little bit left, and you can maybe store some stuff there. Seats to Meet is just one of the examples in the Netherlands of co-working space, but of course co-working you also have here. Rewear, only for the women in the room. More high-end fashion that is hanging in the closet for most of the times. And maybe somebody else would like to appear in that dress for one day because he or she, this time she, has a big party where she wants to go to but doesn't have a beautiful dress. Maybe she can borrow it from you. Airbnb, what's in the name? This is Air, Drink and Dine, and of course it's a little blink to Airbnb. This is home restaurants. So if you like to cook, but you don't want to let people take it out, but you want to cook in your own home, then you can do this through this platform. Connected is skill sharing. Van de bron means of the source, from the source. It's energy sharing. So that might either be the sun energy that you got, the solar energy that you got left, but also maybe the farmers with a big windmill that can provide their energy much directer to you than only through a traditional energy company. And this is again interesting to see because one of the biggest energy companies in Europe has set up the same services from their own brand because they see that many people are picking this up now. And sharing care. And as I told also yesterday, I think this is an interesting example because this is empowering people to help each other out in the local neighborhood. By, for example, doing this because she needs a little help, as you can see. But it can also be maybe somebody bringing to the hospital or playing a little game of chess with somebody who is alone. And the interesting fact is that there is 3 times much more supply of help at this platform than there is demand. So that is showing that there is a lot of people around you that are willing to help you out with something in your neighborhood. Concludingly, this is again this ecosystem, but then only the sharing economy, as you can see. If you look at the Netherlands, there is already an enormous potential of sharing going on in all those different markets. It's really happening. And this is, of course, not only the Netherlands. It differs per country and per city, but for sure it's a growing phenomenon. As you might know, I don't know, but Seoul in Korea, of course, started calling themselves a sharing city in 2012 already. So Mayor Park soon thinking, okay, we have, as every other city, like a lot of urban challenges, and maybe the sharing economy could be partly addressing or solving even maybe partly those challenges, like congestion and transportation, like elderly people who are in need of some help, like a dense city where we maybe need to share some more stuff. In general, maybe taking care a bit more of each other. Social capital, social cohesion. We were, and we is like Peter and I, co-founders of shareNL, quite inspired by that and thought a few years ago, why not make our own city also into a sharing city? So we started writing a vision. I mean, you should start somewhere. So we started writing a vision and thinking, okay, how should this fit Amsterdam? How could Amsterdam benefit from this? and then really the city as a whole. So not only the city government, but again, of course, also those platforms and also businesses and also the public library, for example. How can we participate, let them all participate in the sharing economy and bump into, of course, also all those challenges and learn from that. So at a certain point, we got in touch with the city government and saying, guys, this is a plan. Would you like to be in? We asked them as a sort of an ambassador, and the same we did with all those other organizations I just mentioned, and we just kicked it off. So we said like early 2015, we got that group together, just the first group. So in the middle you have our vice mayor, you have people from the biggest insurance company, from a startup accelerator, from a university, from startups. This diverse group that is making the city, and this diverse group could also be making the sharing city. And just really an appeal to start acting in the sharing economy and to also share your experiences and to do pilot projects. And we were, of course, lucky that the city government was really on board from the very beginning and embracing the sharing economy. So this is what our vice mayor at that point at the launch 2.5 years ago said. Happily, she saw it also as a big opportunity. And one of the first things that the city of Amsterdam did was writing their own plan, their own action plan, as they called it, their action plan sharing economy. Because, of course, we had our vision in place, but we are not the government. We are a social enterprise and thus a private company. So they wrote their own action plan with maybe some obvious reasons why they are into the sharing economy. And this whole action plan is also available in English. And I can, of course, share it with you. But they saw, of course, the reasons of sustainability, of mobility. I think most of them are already mentioned. Social inclusion, social cohesion, and most of the times a more social neighborhood or a more social community is also a safer neighborhood. And of course also innovation in the startup environment, because Amsterdam is also really focusing on its startup ecosystem. And as I showed you before, all those examples, they are partly or mostly even based in Amsterdam. But as I said before, there are also some hurdles, some challenges. How do you keep it a fair playing field? If you have Airbnb, but you have your traditional hotel industry, if you have your car sharing, but you have your traditional rental companies, and that goes for all those markets. And how do you keep it a social, secure aspect, of course? I mean, this is doing something also to the way we work. More and more freelance, more and more gig work, like really small tasks, you know, and does, for example, this new generation think about what it does to their social security. And maybe also reconsider some rules and regulations. Because what, for example, the government in Amsterdam sees, and that goes also for other governments in the world, is that maybe their regulation is sticking to traditional companies, but not to platforms. A platform is a different way. It's really an online place, an online marketplace where supply and demand are coming together, but that is different from a company that is delivering a product or a service. So maybe you could reconsider some of those regulations. So those are some of the elements, and again, this presentation can be shared also afterwards, so feel free to take a picture or note it all down, but you can have this all, of course. And basically, this is the more or less like the punchline of this action plan. So you could either say as a city, you ban things, or you authorize just things, or you take maybe a bit of like what the Amsterdam approach could be. It's like a road in the middle where you just monitor what is happening and go where the opportunities are. And this is a mural painting in the heart of Amsterdam. And I think this is a bit of the metaphor of a sharing city. It says, ik speel in de stad met alles wat er bestaat. So please repeat after me. No. I play in the city with everything that is already there. It's so simple, but that's the case. We have everything in a city. We have all the skills, we have all the mobility, we have all the food, we have all the... I mean, I don't have to explain you guys here in Singapore. You have everything that you want. But maybe it's not always equally divided. And I don't want to say that I want to go to like a socialist or communist regime, not at all. But, you know, if we tend to share a little bit more, maybe that's benefiting everybody. Both the provider and the receiver of the sharing service that you're making use of. Maybe take this one first. This is like a really recent comparative study of 9 European cities done by a student who was an intern at shareNL, studying at the University of Utrecht. And she compared 9 European cities that are working somehow with the sharing economy. And I must say that like for most cities in the world, it is still a new field. So don't think that Singapore is lacking much more behind or something. For the most cities, it's still quite new. But there's also an opportunity to learn from the cities maybe that are a bit further, and also maybe learn from their failures. And here, for example, is 5 elements from her research, and just showing how different cities are using the sharing economy, and also what their focus is on. So one thing is, of course, informing people about those platforms. That's already an important one. It may sound so easy, but you have to educate people, and not only about the opportunities, but also about all those risks, social security, etc., insurances, etc.
How do you generate trust between the providers or peer-to-peer? Right? I'm giving you the keys to my house, literally, or to my car.
Yeah.
So what assurance do I have besides your insurance? I mean, all that. How do you encourage this trust element between peer-to-peer?
Yeah, the trust thing is a really important one, of course. It's the currency of the sharing economy, and the question is almost, is trust helping to grow the sharing economy, or is the sharing economy helping to grow trust? And of course, this is also different per culture, I think. Of course, it's partly enforced by platforms having review systems. I mean, you want to look people in the eye. Maybe first an example of looking people in the eye. You have different car sharing platforms in the Netherlands. One is Snapcar, I mentioned, and there you have to hand over the key and walk around the car to see if there was already damage together. There was also another car sharing platform that was making this all electronically. It appeared that this car sharing platform where people have to meet each other first worked better, because especially when you're renting out your car for the first time to somebody, you want to look that person in the eye. Oh, sorry. So I think that is an important one, to look each other in the eye if it's possible. Because of course, if you're doing a home exchange with somebody in France, you're not first driving up to France to look him in the eye. The other thing is, of course, the review and reputation system. So if you see that somebody is apparently trustworthy because he or she has already rented a car 20 plus times and did very well, and everybody giving him or her 4.5 or 5 stars, it says surely something. But still, it is also intrinsic, like, okay, is this in your culture? Is this in your DNA? And if it's not, okay, how can you encourage this? This is an interesting question. So this is also posing it to you. So is there, in general, maybe enough trust in the room to start sharing, or are there too many hurdles for now? Or do we need a new generation that is stepping into those Uber pools and grab hitches, whilst the older generation maybe is not so much? Yeah.
I think that the whole sharing economy makes a lot of sense for efficient allocation of resources, but I'm not too sure on this equitable part, because like you rightly mentioned earlier, the older people seem not very, it relies a lot on technology and platform, and so there's this group that doesn't have access maybe, and so how is government trying to reach out to them? And maybe secondly also, then we have heard a lot of good things about it. Could you share some negative externalities involved with this? Is it really an operational issue, or is it more conceptual? And I think lastly, just now you mentioned something interesting about time. I was wondering if there are any interesting time sharing models.
Yeah, there's a time bank coming up in Toronto. Hallelujah. This is like being maybe a bit jet lagged or tired. Here in Singapore, of course. There's also one in Toronto. That's why I mixed up. One example to make it really a low barrier is, for example, we did workshops in the local public library in Amsterdam. And also these kind of things are happening all over the world in cities now, to just educate people from a really basic level, to maybe even show them how the websites are working. There is maybe the basic element of that people can go online. That is something that's mostly needed. But as soon as they can go online and they have internet at home, or they have internet through the public library, then they can learn much more about the opportunities and the risks of the sharing economy. You could start, this is also another one, again, Amsterdam, sorry. You have a city pass. The city pass is for elderly people, like 65 plus, and also people who are not so well-to-do. And now the city government is looking how they can connect the sharing economy to the city pass, so to give easy access and make also, again, people aware of the sharing economy. And maybe if people are not so well-to-do and still think they have to cling on to their car, maybe they don't have to because there's car sharing in place. You just have to teach them and get them in. So that's also one. For example, it starts early, so we'll also start piloting with teaching kids also how this is working and how they could benefit, So just some examples really close by that I have to maybe partly answer your question and make it easy and approachable for every group. And then there were, I think, 2 other questions even, or one?
Are there any negative externalities involved with sharing?
Yeah, well, one research we did was about sustainability, and in general, it has a positive sustainable effect, but it could also be, for example, and that's just one example, if you look at the boat sharing, and you have like an older boat with like the dirty gasoline kind of thing, and that is going to sail more, then, that is a negative effect. Another thing is that you could, if you rent out your house on Airbnb 60 days a year, have quite some extra income on there. Is it income that people are going to use to travel more? And if they're going to travel more, maybe that again has like a sustainable aspect there. So that could also be negative. So those are some sustainable, potential also negative effects. Yeah, and there's always misuse, but that's the oldest in the book. So there have been cars that have been provided by a neighbor, and somebody took that car to drive into how do you call this? A money machine where you can take out money, an ATM. That happens sometimes, that people drive a car in there. I never did it before. But some people do. I don't know. Is it also happening in Singapore? No. Sometimes people in the world use a car to open up these ATMs. Sometimes that is also happening with shared cars, and those downsides are there too. So, yeah. People are always finding, and of course the misuse of Airbnb, for example, that people are homeowners and like real estate agents and just rent out all those apartments continuously. That is not how we should do it. Then you should like get your permit and be a hotel, and not say that you're rented out on Airbnb. And that is something you should prevent. It should be balanced, and that is. But sometimes it does this first before it's balancing again, and that's where we need government.
If not, I've got one concerning culture.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the cultural element to it. Given that Singapore is pretty diverse now, local foreign mix, and vice versa. Is it the same case in Amsterdam? I mean, how do you deal with cultural diversity in this element of sharing economy?
Yeah, it's one to closely watch because, I think here in Singapore you want to prevent, but it is happening, is that sometimes people group together with the same ethnicity or nationality or background, and the same goes in Amsterdam. And maybe it wouldn't be a problem if those communities themselves are also sharing, but you want, of course, also the intercultural sharing there.
Any lessons to?
Yeah, well, I think you have to prevent discrimination, So if there was this case, again, about Airbnb, but again, I think it's a big platform, so you get all these cases also around it, is that somebody was trying to get somebody's Airbnb apartments, and he was black. And he was refused, and then he changed his picture on his profile to a white person, and then he was accepted. There you got shit, So so I'm glad, and I hope that it's not only a PR thing, that Airbnb really started making their discrimination policies much better and really work on that. But that is something, again, maybe with dealing with people, the oldest in the book. But you should put everything in place, I think, to prevent this and to stimulate this and to. Like a government in general should do, to get more cultures together continuously. And maybe something like a public library is one of those spaces where all the cultures come together. So put them all in one workshop and let them even if it's playful, let them share already something, Start low level, make it easy. And I think there's already like a lot of sharing going on in a lot of cultures, so only not through this platform. So maybe extrapolate that a little bit, that might be. But bring people together live also, because this is mainly online, of course, and then through online you get a live contact. But yeah, make people aware, connect them, make them feel safe somehow. Yeah.
I'm personally interested in the building more trust, general trust to anyone in the world. So that's my interest. So do you think the sharing economy or the platform help people to bring the general trust higher?
Yeah.
Or do you think it can be the same?
No, I think it does. I just did an interview before this, and I mentioned the example of a few years ago, a research in the Netherlands done by an organization called True Price, and they have a certain measurement tool to measure the true impact, societal impact of a certain phenomena. So they took 4 sharing platforms and they measured how much their society impact was transferred to euros. I'm coming to your question. And those 4 sharing platforms with, I think, in total more than 100,000 transactions had a societal impact of 4 million euros. So let's say 6.5 million Singaporean dollars. So on the one hand, they researched this, and on the other hand, from this research also came that people said and encountered that they found more trust there and more social connections through the exchange of sharing economy platform. So it is one measurement, but I think in general, as I said before, like neighborhoods where sharing is going on more are mostly also safer neighborhoods, because people get to know each other better, know who is living there and maybe who's not, and a bit of each other's backgrounds. So new encounters come from that. I think we should research this more. That's absolutely a thing. So anyone here who is still looking for a topic to research, maybe that's one. But I think it is. I think it leads to more trust and more social connections. Absolutely.
Are you aware of any cities, or whether Amsterdam has started charging tax on people who actually rent out their homes and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do they actually tax people?
Yeah.
The second question is, what's your thoughts on the whether participants of the sharing economy, for example, Uber driver, are they classified as contractors, employees or contractors?
Yeah.
Whether that has implications on the health benefits and social security.
So yes, the city of Amsterdam and Airbnb are working together on collecting tax, tourist tax. So, for example, I think last year for the first time that happened, and that was like 5.5 million euros, so maybe 7.5, 8 million Singaporean dollars collected, because it was immediately taken care of through the platform of Airbnb to collect or to redirect to the site of the tourist tax. So I think that is a big opportunity, I think also for other cities, and also fair. Again, to make it also a fair playing field and not saying, okay, if you are in a traditional hotel, you have to pay tourist tax, and if you're in an Airbnb or apartment, you are not taxed. So I think that's a good thing. Any other question, sorry, was, in general, the future of work is a really important one. I mean, work is changing, and now it's, now it's sharing economy and maybe more platformization, much more things and services are turning into platforms. That's already hard to regulate sometimes. And as I mentioned also to you, now it's still people acting on those platforms, but soon, partly, supply and demand will also be automated. Soon, your agenda will see that you have a mobility question for tomorrow because you want to go to some place and need a car from somebody else. You're not even acting on it yourself. So I think it's also a call for especially governments to get to know the sharing economy, and therefore also maybe the platform economy good now, because it's already a big challenge. But before, now you can still talk to people and to platform owners. In a few years, it's like partly algorithms, it's partly AI, it's partly robotics, really, and you cannot talk to those guys. You cannot talk to an algorithm, you cannot talk to an automated platform. So better move up fast because times is changing. The same is like we're taking this taxi drive from another location to here today. There's still a driver there, but in a few years there's no driver. So we're thinking all the time about this driver. We should, because it's his job, and he's doing most of the times here in Singapore a job at Uber or Grab Hitch, for example, next to his other job. Goes for all those people almost. But within a few years, there are no drivers anymore in those seats. So we're making regulations for those drivers. We should, again, but once that regulation is in place, there are no drivers anymore. So it's really, really a challenge for city governments to keep up. And it will be even a bigger challenge.
In terms of coverage for part-time or gig economy workers.
Yeah.
In terms of the medical benefits, for example, or insurance or retirement, how does Amsterdam or the Dutch government?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, for example, the services from Uber in the Netherlands, where you as a private person are driving around without a permit, banned in the Netherlands. So it's not active there, whilst the Uber Europe headquarters is in Amsterdam. So that's funny. But so that's banned because there is really tough regulation around taxi industry in the Netherlands because it was a not so good industry. So they're now bumping into that. But also the national government in the Netherlands and also other governments will say the more responsibility you take as a platform, maybe the less we have to do with regulation. But that's also a hard thing because partly they're commercial, so they also want to make money and maybe that's sometimes their first move. On the other hand, for example, I heard an example of Deliveroo, like one of those food delivery services, of course. I heard this a few years ago in London that they were thinking about providing helmets to their bikers. But if they would do that, they heard from the government, then they were creating an employer-employee relationship. And this is exactly what they don't want to be as a platform, So how can we go and make maybe a new regulation or at least change regulation to make these laws fit for both platforms as well as companies so that a platform can also take this responsibility without becoming an employer? Or for example, a traditional postal company in the Netherlands with a lot of postal delivery guys and girls, just saying if you're going to work for us, you can choose if you want to be on a payroll or if you want to be a gig worker. You can choose. Maybe that's also a future possibility.
If you are aware of any best practices for sharing economy and food waste, surplus food redistribution, any apps and any platforms that are addressing this issue in Amsterdam?
Yeah, they are there. I don't know them that well, but they're sure in the Netherlands, but I think at different places in the world. I spoke to a lady from Oslo a few weeks ago, and she is also doing a lot with local food and local food distribution. I will give you her name because she's a really interesting person and totally reinventing the food distribution in her own community. Yeah, that's really interesting, and also trying to avoid food waste, etc. So I think food will be a big industry also in the sharing economy.
Based on your example just now of the food sharing and the work with the city government, are there examples of the sharing economy resulting in city governments cutting back on social services because they outsource it to private companies? And I think the second question that I have that maybe is related to this is some of these things are a direct swap, like a house and a house or a car and a car, a vehicle. And some of it is not equal. So one person has a car, one person doesn't. There's an exchange of money.
Yeah.
Are there examples where there is no exchange of money, but how do you calculate the equivalence, I guess? So there is the time bank example, which is really interesting, but are there examples where you are swapping something without exchanging money, and is there an example in Amsterdam?
Yeah, because indeed I know the example of time bank, 1 hour for 1 hour, so to say. Anybody else in the room apart from Amsterdam? Because of course, let's broaden our minds. But is there somebody else who knows maybe an answer to your question? Because not one comes up right now as to a different system. And that's also partly, I think, why money was invested to make it more efficient instead of saying, okay, I bake a bread for you, you're going to make her shoes and she's going to, so that's the efficiency there for money. And of course, money also for a lot of things. Sorry for the word. That we're only on YouTube. Beep, sorry. But I don't know if there are any, but maybe that's just in your local community without any online platform. Then maybe that is what we're doing. That could be.
I just wish to add, can the platform do some sort of parity, give and take kind of thing, that's a monetary or?
Yeah, maybe this is not answering your question, but how about a platform in the United States that is setting a sort of a minimum wage there? I think that is a great attempt, also to protect workers. So without trying to be an employee, saying, okay, you cannot offer to do this gig job for less than $5 an hour or something. That is something. Again, take responsibility as a platform, please.
Yeah, no, just example. Maybe what we are trying to do is we are travel platform. Is a local people guide travelers. So we give the credit to those local people that if they go, they can use this credit when they go to travel to the other country. They can be guided for free. So that's one of the examples that we've been trying this year to see if we can do without paying money directly, because their motivation is not getting money. Their motivation is to enjoy and help other travelers. But by providing the money, it's kind of incentivized in the wrong way. So many people join it and they will do the professional guide instead of the local guide. So that's what we are trying to do. Not giving the money, but giving experience.
Thank you.
Just to add, in Singapore, I think there's at least 2 time banking startups starting soon. One's Quidlet, that is our village. So look out for them. Quidlet, Kuiddle, and our village. For exchange of items, if you go to Free Cycle, there's a lot of Facebook groups. Free Cycle, you can give and take anything you want for free. There's also pass it on by Central CDC, so you have unused appliances or furniture, you can pass it to them, they will distribute it to the needy.
Maybe give you, I'm thinking of this example, maybe to give you still, if that's okay, because that's national government in the Netherlands again, sorry. I happen to be Dutch. And it's also really all act more on the sharing economy, and then we can give much more examples also of Singapore, but that's going to happen, I'm sure. I told you briefly about Airbnb, the platform where you can be like a home restaurant. That is bumping, of course, into a lot of regulation because food safety, alcohol abuse, the parking spots being taken by guests in your local neighborhood, zoning, I mean, it's a house and it's not a restaurant, fair playing field, etc. There is a program from the Ministry of Economic Affairs in the Netherlands saying that sometimes maybe you should give a platform the right to challenge. In other words, the right to challenge the current legislation or the current system. We had 2 roundtables in this field where all those different organizations that are in place in the Netherlands to guarantee the quality of food and you know, the alcohol abuse and parking guys and city governments, etc., all to one table. What do we think about this? What do we think about this platform? And do we want to ban it, or do we want to authorize it, or how can it exist in this current system? And it was quite amazing to see that most of those organizations were quite open to it and not so restrictive. There was only the traditional hotel and restaurant industry saying it is unfair competition, but most of those others said, yeah, we also see that this is happening. We also see that if, for example, the platform takes a certain responsibility and maybe does a little training so that people know that they have to have a safe kitchen as to food, and probably they won't want to spend too much alcohol there because that would be hurting their own wallet, etc. So this is a way, and this is really pilot and really also early stage, but it is a way of saying, okay, do we have to give some platforms the right to challenge the current legislation? And again, otherwise sometimes people will do it anyway, but then without the platform, and then there is nothing to regulate. So also be aware of that.
What sort of common criteria or characteristics do you see in certain cultures that would engender more trust between the members of the society? Is there something that's special or peculiar, or is it historical?
Yeah, this is really what I want to know. This is really where I want to say, okay, can we do this research together with different cultures and get this on the table? Because I don't know. I can just say, okay, maybe a bit how my culture is working, or the example of Sean from MCCY saying, okay, that he has been in the Netherlands and see that like the fences around the garden are like this high and the fences here are like this high. You know, what does that say? I'm not sure. Maybe the Dutch are a bit more entrepreneurial and maybe a bit more like open to new things. Could be than different other cultures. I'm not sure. I couldn't answer this. I would love that I could answer this. You could like put a lot of review and insurance mechanism in place to foster this, of course. But preferably, of course, we want a better trusted society. How? Hopefully partly by doing this, but indeed I know the examples of where it goes wrong and that they steal it or they break it. It's easy to say maybe that our hope is also on a new generation, but there are probably also thieves in a new generation. I don't know. It's hard to answer. I don't know if anybody else has an insight on this because it's like a group effort, I think.
I don't know how to do it, but the businesses know how to do it. Just look, for example, Grab or Uber. If you look back 2 or 3 years ago, we didn't trust other people's. Going to other people's car and taking people's car, right? That didn't occur to us 2 to 3 years ago.
No, but you
now we are actually
doing
it.
You had this earlier in Singapore's history, and I'm a bit older.
Yeah, that was the ARS.
In the 60s and 70s.
That was government force.
Government force, okay.
That was a different thing. But what I'm saying is that within 2 or 3 years, we actually developed the trust to go into other strangers' car. They're relatively short time, right?
There is merit in recognizing one of the main reasons why consumers in Singapore take these rides, like extra apps, is because it's really so much cheaper than the available options.
Yeah, so we have to think through the business lens and see how we can develop trust through that, and not trust through a government kind of way. So we have to look through the business lens and see how we can develop trust.
Maybe in a few weeks or months' time, look up a new book by Rachel Botsman. Rachel Botsman is the person that is already an authority in the field of sharing economy for years. She's living in Australia and came out with a book on the sharing economy in 2010, so really early in the field. And she's now already for a few years working on a book on trust and of course also the link to the sharing economy. I think it will be out this September or October. I'm really looking forward to that book, and I'm not pretending to say that she's knowing all the answers to your question, but I think you will find some answers maybe there. And I'm also going to this quest more from now on, because I really like it, and it's especially, you know, meeting all these different cultures. We want to have this on the table. What can we do there to and foster more trust?
How essential has the work of city governments been? Because it was only in 2015, I think, that Amsterdam became a sharing city. Yet there's clearly been a lot of activity between presumably private players or between communities. Right? So just that tension between individuals just making it work and the role of city governments.
Yeah, well, that is why a few days ago I thought, okay, I can have so much slides and I don't like text so much, but this is maybe wrapping it up a bit. This is what you maybe based on, you know, the previous slides, I'm not going to bore you with that, is like also European Parliament. They have like a new agenda on the collaborative economy, European Commission, all those institutions, different other cities. If you boil it down, I think these are some of the points that you could take to start tomorrow, and that are, I think, also maybe applying to Singapore is really start by mapping what is already there and knowing also where the gaps are and maybe also where the most activity is. And then you also know, okay, this is maybe the field where we start to regulate because there is, for example, already a lot happening in transportation or in accommodation, but not so much in care or logistics. Make a vision, and please all together. The workshop was a great attempt yesterday, I think, to get all those different groups together and come up with like a joint manifesto for what you want to do with your city and put the focus there. As I said before, get more research done. You have great universities, so start working on that or expand that. Well, I think most of them speak for themselves.
How's the Seoul tracking? Because they started in 2012.
Yeah. How they're doing right now? I think quite well, but I think they also are a bit of searching now at this moment how they should proceed. And sometimes you can have like a lot of initiative from the city government, but in the end also the market or just the people have to pick it up, you know. I'm not so sure if that's happening continuously, so that is also something to take in mind. So where do you take the initiative of a city government? Where do you really want to empower the people to do it themselves? Where do you already want to regulate whilst maybe the industry is not even mature, you know? So be aware of that. And that is especially also what we do with the city government in Amsterdam, is really help them monitoring continuously the field and the developments, so that you know where to be and maybe where you should maybe back off a little and wait and see. Yes?
Apart from bicycles, umbrellas and things that didn't work out, what are the things that didn't work out, you know, in Amsterdam or something, and what came out of that? Did something better come out of it?
I'm really curious how the bike sharing will work out in Amsterdam, because we all own a bike in Amsterdam, and now O-Bike is coming to Amsterdam, and Donkey Republic from Copenhagen, and the Chinese platforms will probably also enter Amsterdam. But because we already have so many bikes, and I know you asked also about other things than bikes, but because we already have so many bikes, and we also have so many tourists on bikes, Amsterdam is more strict on like, put your bike here and not here, because we'll take it away. So there will be a big mess, I think, with the O-bikes and the Mo-bikes and all the other bike sharing platforms if they come to Amsterdam, unless they talk to the city government and see if they can collaborate. And the same, I think, is even here. You know, your biking culture is totally different, but already people have their thoughts about the bike sharing platforms here. So it might be failing in Amsterdam whilst we're into biking. For other things, let me think. Yeah, you know, it's easy to go back to this, but like in transportation and accommodation is the biggest things happening, because those are also the first things that a lot of people are sharing, because those are expensive goods. So it's attractive to share your house and share your transportation. So those are also the biggest things and the biggest issues. I think Amsterdam or the Netherlands in general is doing a lot to get more shared cars on the road, but it's not easy. It's not easy also, I mean, here you are attached to your car, but also in the Netherlands, people think they are the only one that can drive a car. They think that women cannot drive, sorry. They are attached to their seating like this, and nobody wants, you know. So there are, even in the Netherlands, so many hurdles. And so you can have like, programs where Amsterdam says you get 300 euros from the government if you get rid of your parking permit. In other words, you get rid of your car, we give you 300 euros of car sharing voucher. That is already a few years ago. I was one of the very few people that made use of this. Most people don't get out of their cars for 300 euros. So yeah, that's with pilots. I mean, that's not really a problem with 300 euros, but yeah. So, and other things, the failures. Yeah, most of those platforms are too small scale to really fail big time until now. It's hard for them as platforms, and maybe you can do something as a city government. For example, this Peerby, this good sharing platform, it does a great job, but it's also still finding its business model, you know. Could it maybe get some help from the government, not only in funding, but also maybe other ways in community building, to even expand their services so that they can thrive and coexist with the traditional market, instead of having a hard time for years and years with setting up their organization. So yeah, I know, and that's also sometimes the frustration of this founder. So okay, like, he's creating so much social capital, can I get some help maybe from the city government? On the other hand, he is an entrepreneur, he knows this, and he also has to get it done himself.
You're actually looking for little enterprises that need to evolve very fast, but to create a revolution.
Yeah.
So I heard this from Elmer Mock, you know, he's the co-founder of Swatch in the 70s so far. You evolve, but you know, evolve faster now.
Yeah.
You have to have revolution. So
Yeah.
whether that's in the public or even at governments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't react, there will be a counter-reaction.
Yeah.
Implosion.
Absolutely, and I would suggest also for Singapore, keep a close watch on how platforms succeed or fail in other cities and learn from that. So if it's the government, or if it's like a social entrepreneur setting something up, learn from all those failures, because otherwise there will be in the Netherlands for sure startups failing in the coming periods. And that's not only because the sharing economy is sometimes maybe growing not too fast enough, but also because not everybody is an entrepreneur, or they don't know how to reach their public. So yeah, it's sometimes a jungle out there, even in the sharing economy. It's in the end, not about technology, as is on the slide, but really about society. So we're all the times talking about sharing economy, etc., but maybe take the perspective of the sharing society. And these are, again, my two daughters, this time not in princess dresses, but in front of my house. And you see a little house there, and this house, this is a doll house, and they didn't use it already for years ago, and we put it on the street while we're living 2 stories up, so these windows are not our windows. We just put it on the street and call this the little sharing home and put some stuff which we didn't need in there. You probably all know the system with like books, but we did it for more stuff than only books. And I thought, you know, maybe this is going to work and maybe it's going to be taken away by the garbage man next day. It's already there for 3 years. And it's a thriving little ecosystem. And of course, my daughters get the system totally because I told you guys before, they park their bikes every day after school. And you know, a lot of stuff goes into my house also. But they know that if they don't use it, that they're going to put it back. And of course, it's not only for them, it's for everybody in the neighborhood or who is passing by on the bike. And really, there is quite some contact when people are looking in the house or putting some stuff there because they cleaned the attic. It's really close by, it's really simple, it's really offline, it has nothing to do with any internet aspects, but I do think it does something to my neighborhood at least. I always love to see the contact and the different people that are there making this happen, so it might be the easiest way to find people in local neighborhoods to start with initiatives like this and you know, set it up from the basic ground and foster a little trust there. So, and it's, yeah, this is, for example, a barbecue, I think 6 or 7 weeks ago in just around the corner at our place. This was a spontaneous barbecue because in my neighborhood, people really got to know each other over the last few years, not only through this sharing home, of course. And this is like 2 hours before the barbecue started, somebody said, okay, let's have a barbecue. And like everybody's like, yeah, okay, I'm in. And here, this is like a multi-diverse community, I think, and having also a lot of fun with each other. So it's possible. It's possible. And I really hope to see more of these kind of communities everywhere around the world. And I think you can all be part of that. So that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.